Welcome to the activity, a summary to solve fraction. This is going to give you once review really fast to try to remember how to solve really fast on fraction, and you can take like a simple recipe. Let's start with something that I call the main rules to solve any problem with fraction. We call to the main rule that is any number divided by 1 is the same number. For example, we have 6 can be represented like 6 over 1. Whenever we have any to solve any fraction, this simple main rule is going to help you a lot. Instead to use an integer, we are going to try to express in the fractional way only divided by 1. This is going to help you to solve many problems. In algebra, something that we are going to see later, also we can apply the same property. If we have, for example, one variable a, we can express the variable a like to be a divided by 1. It's exactly the same. Okay, after that, let's start with the most simple solution for fraction whenever we have multiplication. Let's see, the multiplication of fraction, basically I call the straight multiplication. Let's start to see why. If we have, for example, something like 3 times 6 over 7, we can identify that we have one integer times one fraction. So integers, if you remember the main rule, it's better express the integers in the fractional way. Then basically whenever we have kind of any multiplication, is multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. So it's going to be 3 times 6 to give me the new numerator and 1 times 7. At the end, we are going to have this is 18 divided by 7. That is exactly what we have. Very simple, isn't it? If we have things like, for example, a third times 6/4, it's going to be up to you if you want to simplify this, but only for educative purpose I'm going to keep this number. So numerator times numerator, 8 times 6 is going to give me the new numerator, and the denominators, 3 times 4, are going to give me the new denominator. So in this way we have 48 divided by 12, and that is the extra we can simplify. The most simple way to try to reduce a little bit the fraction, try to divide every single term, numerator and denominator, with the same number. For example, 48 divided by 2 is going to give me 24. Also I need to divide by 2 the denominator. 12 divided by 2 is going to be 6. I can keep simplifying and divided by 2, 24. I'm going to have 12, and 6 divided by 2 is going to give me 3. From here it's really evident that we can simplify. 12 divided by 3 is 4. In the same way, we are going to find sometimes variables in algebra that we are going to use in this class. For example, things like a times b times divided by c. So you can consider the variable a like to have or to be one integer. So we apply the main rule. We divide the integer by 1, and we can multiply and apply the same recipe. Numerator times numerator to create the new numerator, a times b, and the denominator times the denominator, 1 times c. After multiplying, it's going to have ab divided 1 times c is 1c. Sometimes we simplify and we never write this kind of ones. So it's going to be the same like ab divided by c. See that integers affect or integer numbers affect only the numerator. This is going to help you a lot in several functions. In this class, sometimes we are going to use this principle to solve variables. Also, consider this. For example, if we have units, for example, like the units of power, we are going to learn that we are going to have newtons times meters per second. This is going to give me identify newtons is an integer, so divided by 1, apply the main rule, times meters per second. We have newtons meters, 1 times seconds, and we can simplify newtons meters over seconds. The same that we have been doing. If we have the units, for example, I don't know, for kilograms per second times meters per second, you can identify that we have the same. We are going to use numerator times numerator, kilograms times meters to create the new numerator, and denominator times denominator, seconds times seconds. In the next class, we are going to see whenever we have the same base or the same variable, we are going to have seconds squared and kilograms meter. Let's go for the next operation that we have for fraction, and this will be divisions. For division of fraction, we need to understand that there are several representations. I use something that is known like the sandwich rule. Let me write this. Okay, if we find a division with 3 terms, we divide the integer by 1. So in this case, we are applying the main rule, and we express the operation in 4 terms. Next step, will be multiply the term of the top with the term at the bottom. To create the new numerator. To create the denominator, we will multiply the terms in the middle. That is the reason that we call to this the sandwich rule. Let's try one example. Suppose that we have the expression 3 divided 4/5. We have an integer and a fraction. So the integer can be expressed in a fractional way. But in this class, instead to use this kind of operation, it's more simple if we take the first part in the numerator and the second part is going to be in the denominator. So we have the main division. Now we are going to multiply the extremes, the top times the bottom, to create the new numerator. 3 times 5, and we are going to multiply the intermediate terms. 1 times 4. This is going to give me 5 times 3, 15, and 1 times 4, 4. Probably you remember that you apply the crisscross rules. This times this is going to give me this, or this times this is going to give me the same. It's the same, but sometimes from the principles that we are going to be using for variables, it's going to be more simple in this way. Another example that we can find is, for example, if we have let's try 3/8 over 6. We have to identify the main division. We have a fraction divided by an integer. Integers, remember, divide by 1. And then we can apply the sandwich rule. The sandwich rule says multiply the tops times the bottom to create the new numerator. 3 times 1. And the intermediate terms, 8 times 6. Imagine that you are doing one sandwich. So always we are going to have the ham below the bread. That's how you can remember this rule. If we invert something, we are going to have the burrito rule or something, but it's going to be different. 3 times 1 is 3. 8 times 6, 48. We can simplify. Let's try divide by 3. It's going to give me 1, and this is going to be divided. So let's see. Divide by 3, and this is going to give me 16. That's correct. Okay. Now, what happens if we have these 4 variables? For variables, we can apply also, and we use a lot, the sandwich rule. Let's try, for example, units of acceleration. Sometimes we are going to have the units from speed, in the international system, meters per second divided by seconds. You can identify we have a fraction that divides an integer. So we are going to have to transform the integer using the main rule, seconds divided by 1, and apply then the sandwich. Meters times 1 and seconds times seconds. So we have, after simplify, meters divided seconds squared. Those are the units of acceleration. So for division, we are going to apply exactly the same. So we have two possibilities: to find the variable 8 over b divided c. We are going to identify the integer and divide the integer by 1. Then apply the sandwich. 8 times 1 and b times c. To find at the end 8 over b c. Or a second possibility, if we have the fraction in the denominator. Let's try to use d divided by e over f. So the integer this time is going to be in the numerator. We have a fraction also. So divide the integer by 1 and we can apply the sandwich. D times f in the numerator and the intermediate terms in the denominator. So we have df over e. Those are going to be the way to solve fraction and division with fraction. Finally, we are going to have additions and subtraction. In this case, I'm going to focus only for numbers because it's more complicated try to do addition and subtraction with units or variables. In fact, we need to have the same units in order to solve this way. We are going to see later that part. So let's focus only in the numbers. Additions and subtractions of fractions. There are many ways to solve this. I'm going to use one. It's called the cross multiplication, and it consists in 3 simple steps. So number 1, so you multiply the denominators. And to create, that will be to create the new denominator. Step number 2 will be multiply and cross the terms. And write in the numerator. The multiplication. Finally, step number 3, write the operator. It could be plus or minus with the previous owner. Of the operator. Okay, 3 simple rules. Let's try to solve one example. Let's try to use 6 divided by 4 plus 3 over 2. Step number 1 says multiply. Whenever we have an addition of fractions, we need to multiply the denominators to create the new denominators. So it's going to be 4 times 2. Done. Step number 2 will be multiply in cross the terms. So in this case, 6 times 2 times 3 times 4. So 6 times 2 and 3 times 4. Finally, step 3 will be detect and apply the correct operators with the previous owner. For example, 6 has hidden a plus here. So this is going to move to be part of this. And 3 has this plus that is going to move to this area. So again, step number 1 will be multiply the denominators. Step number 2 is multiply in cross. And step number 3 is going to move the operators. So whenever we have this part, it's only solve this. For denominators, 4 times 2, 8. 6 times 2, 12. And 4 times 3, 12 again. So we can solve this like 24 over 8. We can see that both a numerator and denominator are divisible by 2. So I'm going to divide by 2. 12 divided by 4. I can also divide again by 2. Going to 6 divided by 2. And 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. Okay, let's try one more. Let's try a subtraction. Minus 3/5 plus 7/9. First, we have an addition or subtraction of fractions. We are going to simplify with 2 terms. If we have more than 2 terms, we can make groups. So first step, multiply the denominators. 5 times 9. Step number 2, multiply and cross the terms. 3 times 9 and 7 times 5. Finally, we need to move the previous operators. So 3 has a minus in front, so we are going to move this minus here. And 7 has a plus in front, so we are going to move that here. And it's only solve this part. 5 times 9, 45. 9 times 3, 27. Don't forget that minus. And 7 times 5, 35. Okay? Solving that. 35 minus 27, we are going to have a, and divided by 45. We can see that it's no longer divisible by 2, 3, 4, so we keep the fraction solution. One more problem. 2 divided by 5 minus 6 divided by 7. We can see step 1 is going to be multiply the denominators. 5 times 7. Second step, multiply and cross the terms. 2 times 7 and 6 times 5. Finally, move the operators. If you don't see nothing, there is one plus hidden here that we are going to move to this. And 6 is owner of a minus, so we need to move that minus here. And it's ready. 5 times 7, 35. 7 times 2, 14. 5 times 6, 30. Okay? 14 minus 30 is minus 16 divided by 35. We can express in this way, or we can move the minus in front. Remember the properties. Finally, to finish this video, let's try another problem. Suppose that we have something like 7 minus 5/4. Okay? In this case, we can identify an integer that is subtracting a fraction. The main rules, whenever we have fraction and integers, divide the integer by 1. And we can apply these recipes that we have been reviewing today. And after that, we can apply the 3 steps rule. So step 1, multiply the denominators to create the new denominators. Step number 2, multiply and cross the terms. 7 times 4 and 5 times 1. Finally, move the operators. If you don't see nothing, there is one plus hidden here. 5 is the owner of this minus, so we are going to move the minus to this place. Okay? Finally, 7 times 4, 28, minus 5 divided by 4. So we are going to have 23 over 4, and that's all. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.